Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome to my 22-23 Premier League prediction video because ladies and gentlemen, you know how it goes at this time of year. Every single YouTuber, his mom, his dog and his second grade crush is uploading their Premier League prediction videos, and of course I'm going to be doing just that in today's video because as you can see on screen right now, I have a tier list set up in which I'm going to predict the placements of every single team for the upcoming Premier League season. Now of course, as I said, it is that time of year where every single YouTuber provides you guys with a heartfelt opinion of how Premier League teams are going to do in the upcoming seasons, and they get a lot of hate for it. I mean, probably rightfully so and to be expected.
Let's get him, Philly.
But of course, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that there are 20 different places that you have to predict. The possibility of them even getting half or even a quarter of them right is very, very slim. So of course, if there's anything you guys disagree with me throughout this video, which is very, very likely, I do want you to put down in the comment section down below where you think I went wrong and what you would have changed instead. But of course, without further ado, jumping into our Premier League predictions, we start off in the relegation zone. Now, of course, there's absolutely no one, unless you're really, really strange, who wants to hear that their team will end dead last in the Premier League. And of course, starting off in the 20th place spot, who do I think that is going to be? Unfortunately, I do think it will be Bournemouth. Now, of course, don't get me wrong, Scott Parker is an absolutely beautiful man. I mean, really beautiful. But of course, is this Bournemouth team good enough to stay in the Premier League? Look, unfortunately, when Scott Parker was relegated with Fulham, I believe that was a better team than this Bournemouth team. And of course, even when Bournemouth got relegated, I think that team was better than this current Bournemouth team. So of course, if that team got relegated and with very minimal work done so far this transfer window, I do think unfortunately Scott Parker and your beautiful face and this Bournemouth team are going to get relegated once again. I'm sorry, as I said, not a lot of work done this transfer window, and I can't really see them staying up. Saying that, we've seen teams like Fulham, I'm sorry to point you out, spend up to 100 million in a transfer window and they still got relegated. So whether the recipe to stay back up in the Premier League is to spend a lot of money or to use the team that helped to get promoted, I'm not too sure about it. But one thing I am sure about is that Bournemouth will go down. I'm so sorry. But of course, jumping into our second team that I think will get relegated, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it is going to be Leeds United. Now look, of course, I really like this Leeds United team and I think Jesse Marsch has done a fantastic job since taking over last season, but unfortunately at the end of the day, losing the likes of Calvin Phillips and Rafinha will be huge losses to this team. I'm aware that they brought in the likes of Aronson and obviously Tyler Adams, which I think are huge additions to this team, but without Phillips and without Rafinha, it's like having a bicycle and removing both of the tires. I mean, maybe you could drag it some sort of distance, but you won't get very far, and that's kind of how I feel about this Leeds United team. Once again, defensively leak way too many goals, and without Rafinha, they will struggle. Now, of course, jumping into the final team that I think will get relegated. Once again, a very, very tricky spot because, let's be honest, once again, no one wants to hear that their team will get relegated, and of course some teams being very, very close from getting relegated in my opinion. But of course, the final team in my opinion, we're going to keep up the yo-yo tradition as it is going to be Fulham. Now once again, as I've said on many different occasions, Fulham have spent a lot of money before and still gotten relegated. Once again, they've been slightly busy this transfer window and they've brought in some top quality players like Andres Pereira, but unfortunately, once again, at the end of the day, I've seen them spend a lot of money before and they still got relegated. So I don't see why it would be different this time around. Once again, Marco Silva, I used to rate quite highly, but ever since his Everton days, I don't quite rate him as a manager. Obviously, Mitrovic scored 42 goals in the championship last season. Absolutely insane. But once again, we've seen him in the Premier League before where he might be a 40 goal a season kind of striker in the championship, but he's what, a 6 or 7 in the Premier League?
No. He's got a point.
He still has to prove himself. I do think he's a top quality striker, but he needs to show it on the big stage. As I said, Fulham, unfortunately, I hate to say it, I do think the yo-yo tradition will continue. But ladies and gentlemen, before I continue with the rest of my Premier League predictions, I've got a tiny bit of a proposal, if you want to call it that. Obviously, the Premier League season starts in about a week or two from now. And of course, I want to do my Premier League predictions slightly different for my match week predictions. I want to involve you guys, as this is a community-driven channel in my opinion. And of course, for match day 1, I want you guys to send to my Instagram, it's actually Finn, I know, very original name. I want you to send to me a short little video talking about the team that you support and how well you think your team will do in Premier League match week 1 and who you think your best player will be in match week 1. Give me a tiny bit of a prediction because I do want to involve you guys. Okay, proposal over. Now, of course, getting back to the video, who do I think is just going to scrape out or just miss out on a relegation spot? Once again, I do think that it is very, very close for the relegation zone. alone this season. And I do think a team that will be staying in the Premier League this season will be Nottingham Forest. Once again, I can't believe I'm saying that, but of course, after 22, 23 years of being relegated, they are finally back in the Premier League. I can't believe last time they won the Prem was in 1999, which is 2 years before I was even born. Once again, kind of funny to see the 2 stars on the badge for the 2 Champions League that they've won, and comparing it to some of the top teams like Man City or Arsenal or Spurs that haven't won any. But at the end of the day, looking at Nottingham Forest, I do think that they will snatch up that 17th spot. I think they brought in some brilliant players like Jesse Lingard, of course, bringing in the most high potential young player in the world. Once again, long running joke, but I do think Lingard will add a lot to this Forest attack. In terms of defense, once again, Dean Henderson, as we saw with Sheffield United, was an absolute hero when needed to be. I do think that 2 additions like that will add a lot to this Nottingham Forest team and could keep them in the realms of the Premier League. We'll have to wait and see. Now, of course, jumping into the team that I do think will end up in 16th place. And to be honest, this is a team that I originally had in the relegation zone with Everton. Look, one prediction that I'm almost very comfortable making is that I do think Frank Lampard will be the first manager sacked this Premier League season.
I've called this press conference to announce that we want you, the fans at home and abroad, to support someone else.
They had an absolutely awful pre-season. Obviously, they had 1 or 2 games that looked okay, but for the most part, I do think that they do have a lot of struggles. I think bringing Tarkowski in as a centre-back is an absolutely brilliant move, but unfortunately, losing Richarlison up front is such a loss to this team. As we know, Calvin Phillips, a brilliant striker, but of course, he had such a good partnership with Richarlison, and also on top of that, Phillips has struggled with injuries. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, looking at Everton, they still need to improve their defense even with Tarkowski. They do need another midfielder. They do need another striker. As I said, looking at this Everton team, unfortunately, although they got Tarkowski, there are still way too many problems. They could very much get relegated, and I don't think that they are going to have a good season, and I do think that 16th place is in their future. Now, of course, moving on to 15th, it's a team that's pretty much got their name written into 15th spot, as it is Southampton. Now, of course, they ended last season in that 15th spot. Of course, they will be losing Brozier, who has returned from loan to Chelsea, I believe. But at the end of the day, once again, a very, very kind of good-looking transfer window, bringing in the likes of Nigerian Prince, Joe Aribo in the midfield. I believe that that will make a major impact and could really lift Southampton a lot higher than 15th place. Obviously, in terms of goalkeeper, they lost the likes of Forster to Tottenham Hotspurs, who will be a backup goalkeeper, but they do now have the likes of Bazunu, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the Manchester City young promising Irish goalkeeper. Once again, a lot of positive things have been said about him, and I'm excited to see what he can do as a starting goalkeeper. But once again, as I said, just looking at the Southampton team, they just drew way too many games last season, and whether Aribo and Bazunu will be the players to transform those draws into wins, we're still yet to wait and see. As I said, I like the Southampton team, but I really do hope that they show something special this season, because under Hasselhouten, I do believe that they have been slightly more quiet than I would like. Now, of course, moving on to 14th place, once again, a very weird kind of prediction to put down, or very weird team to put down, because it is a team that's going to have a very, very average season, and I do think that will be, am I going to put Crystal Palace? You know what, I think I'm going to put Brentford, then Crystal Palace. Of course, looking at the Bees being Brentford, I do think that they could have a bit of a sting this season, but they won't have quite as sweet as honey kind of season for the Bees.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Obviously, looking at them, they just lost the likes of Christian Eriksen to Manchester United, which, as a United fan, I still can't quite believe it. But on top of that, they did sign the likes of Ben Mee, which I feel like is a heavily underrated transfer, as they've got themselves a solid leader in the back now. And if they're able to hold on to the likes of Ivan Toney up front, once again, this Brentford team could once again surprise a lot of people in the Premier League. As I said, I don't think it's going to be an absolutely spectacular season for them. I do think that they will be worse off compared to last season, but 14th place for Brentford, still not bad. As I said, in 13th place, I've put Crystal Palace, which is one position worse off than last season, which, to be fair, after losing the likes of Conor Gallagher, that would still be a very, very successful season. Once again, looking at Crystal Palace, I feel like their recipe at the moment in terms of success is bringing in young players that no one's ever heard of before and turning them into superstars, which, I mean, has worked up until this point. You've got the likes of Eze, Elise, and so many others. I do like this Crystal Palace team. Obviously, I think they've brought in 1 or 2 absolutely brilliant young players. Obviously, in terms of a goalkeeper, they brought in the likes of Sam Johnston from West Brom, which, once again, tiny bit weird. I do feel like Crystal Palace buy 3 goalkeepers every transfer window, but at the end of the day, I do think Crystal Palace have a very solid team. Last season was Wilfried Zaha's best ever season in a Crystal Palace jersey. So once again, if he can improve off of that, I can still see Crystal Palace having a very solid season. But without Gallagher, as I said, I do think that they will be one worse off. Now, of course, jumping into that 12th place spot, once again, there are a few teams that I could mention here. But I do think I am going to settle with Brighton once again. I'm going to put the Seagulls next to the Eagles because looking at Brighton, my one problem with them is the fact that they are losing Yves Bissouma to Tottenham Hotspurs. They're absolute bus in the midfield. I mean, without their bus, they've got a few, smart cards in the midfield at the moment, which, yes, it is something that is there, but unlike a bus, they won't be able to take the full-on impact that the Premier League has to offer.
I don't know.
As I said, I do believe that Brighton do still have a very, very solid team. But at the end of the day, losing the likes of Bissouma and them not being overly active this transfer window, I haven't seen too much excitement from them. I can't put them as high as I did last season. Obviously, last season they ended 9th place in the Premier League, their highest ever finish in the Premier League. I think they'll be very, very happy with that. But as I said, just compared to last season, losing Bissouma, I could see them drop quite a bit and maybe even lower than 12th or 11th place. Now, of course, jumping into our 12th kind of place finish, once again, I've got quite a few teams that I could put you on offer, but I do think it is going to be Wolverhampton Wanderers missing out by just a margin, in 11th place, in fact. Obviously, looking at Wolves, I do find that they're still missing that clinical striker up front. Obviously, ever since Raul Jimenez got that head injury, he hasn't really been the same, to be honest with you. Maybe he got a concussion and some other person entered his body.
Say what now?
Because this Raul Jimenez isn't quite the Raul Jimenez that we once knew. Obviously contributes from assists from time to time, but I still think that they need a top quality striker. In terms of defense, obviously Roman Saiz has moved from Wolves to Besiktas, which once again a very, very big loss on the defensive front from them. Once again, I haven't seen enough action from Wolves this transfer window. I do think that they do need to pick up a level. They haven't made any major signings that I can see. So unfortunately, I do think Wolves will end up in 11th place, but once again, I wouldn't be surprised if they were 13th or 14th. Now, of course, moving on, who do I think will just take that 10th place spot? Who will just sneak into the top 10? And I do think it will be Aston Villa. Now, once again, I feel like I've said this about quite a few teams, but it is a team that I could see end a lot lower than this. But of course, looking at them, they ended 14th last season. I do think they'll improve by up to maybe even 4 positions. They have signed the likes of Kamara and Carlos, who those two signings I think will be massive for Aston Villa. They haven't lost anyone big, maybe Matty Targett, who was out on loan at Newcastle last season. But obviously, I think that defensively, Aston Villa did slip up, or they did leak a tiny bit last season. Excuse me for the gross analogy. But of course, getting the likes of Carlos in their defense, I think will seriously improve this Aston Villa team. Obviously, they struggled to dominate the midfield from time to time last season. I think Kamara will fix those problems. Obviously, Coutinho has moved on a permanent deal now. I think Aston Villa have seriously improved off of last season, and under Steven Gerrard could look like something special. Once again, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, of course, looking at our 9th place spot, I am stuck between 2 teams at the moment. I'm stuck between Leicester City and West Ham United, to be honest with you. But I do think it is just going to be Leicester City and then West Ham United, the final teams before our European spots. Now, of course, looking at Leicester City, although they did pick up towards the end of last season, they had such a horrific start. Yes, they struggled with injuries here and there. They struggled without the likes of Jamie Vardy. But so far during pre-season, they haven't looked too bad. The likes of Patton Daka's looked good. Obviously, James Maddison had a monstrous season last season and really proved to Gareth Southgate that he still has a spot in the England team. But obviously there are talks about maybe them losing the likes of Yuri Tillemans to Arsenal or Manchester United. Once again, I'm a United fan. I know it's not going to be us, whoever it is. But of course, Leicester City, as I said, I hope that they improve off of last season. Of course, last season they ended up in 8th place, so this would be one worse than last season. But as I said, looking at these European spots and the fight for European spots, it is just so competitive right now. And after the season Leicester had last season, I don't see much improvement, and I do think that they do need to make a few more transfers. They've been very, very quiet this transfer window. And of course, as I said, just missing out on a European spot by one place, it is going to be the semi-finalists of the Europa League, West Ham United. Now, of course, looking at West Ham United, I think they'll be slightly upset that they couldn't sign Jesse Lingard, but they've still got an absolutely fantastic squad. Obviously, Aguad, the Moroccan defender, has just joined the team. I think they'll add a lot of depth to them. It looks as if they've signed the likes of Scamacca, obviously the Italian striker for Sassuolo. Once again, that could add quite a bit of depth to this team. And at the end of the day, as I've said before, West Ham United had a brilliant season last season. Obviously, Areola has also signed on a permanent deal now. Looking at Dawson, he had a brilliant season last season. Declan Rice, brilliant as always. We obviously saw Jared Bowen. I think this West Ham United team really is something special. But unfortunately, just looking at some of the signings that the other European contending teams bought, I do think West Ham United just missed out on the spot. But it's very, very difficult for me not to put them in that 7th place. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to our final 7 positions. Now, this is where it all gets juicy. I feel like this is where all the controversy kind of gets brought in. And of course, in that 7th place spot, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I've put Newcastle United. Look, there was a stage last season, about a third of the way into the season, where they were last place in the Premier League. Obviously got bought over, became the most expensive or the richest club in world football, and they ended last Premier League season in 11th place.
Hey, that's pretty good.
One of the best recoveries you could probably ever hope to see. So of course, now that they've got a bit more money, they've brought in the likes of Sven Botman and Nick Pope on top of that, they are really looking like a new team that could fight for European football. Once again, maybe a bit more controversial as opposed to if I did this and I put them in 8th and I put West Ham United in 7th place. But something tells me that Newcastle United will be able to achieve it. As I said, they've now got a top world-class quality goalkeeper between the posts, and maybe we could even see Nick fight for that number 1 spot. For the England national team, obviously Sven Botman, a very promising looking centre-back. Once again, I feel like Newcastle United kind of beating out the dead wood at the moment, kind of getting rid of them. And I think that they could build a very special team. Obviously, I also came to this conclusion in terms of placing Newcastle United there, because I did ask you guys on my YouTube community page for you to vote in terms of who would do the best out of these teams. You said Newcastle United, so I did listen to you guys. Now, of course, don't forget to subscribe if you do want to contribute in future to future videos, because I do like to include you guys. But of course, above Newcastle United, who do I think is going to be in 6th place? Now, once again, as a Manchester United fan specifically, I feel like the 6th place position, it's always such a dreaded spot because it just means that you did absolutely nothing special that season. Now, of course, unfortunately, I'm going to receive a lot of criticism for this, but I'm going to put Chelsea.
Why?
Now, of course, yes, Chelsea ended 3rd place last season, but towards the end of the season, they really fell off big time. Obviously, they've made major signings with the likes of Koulibaly and Raheem Sterling. I mean, I'm saying this, they could end 6th place or they could end 1st place this Premier League season. I have no idea which way it's going to go. But of course, after losing the likes of Rudiger and Christensen, and on top of that, Romelu Lukaku finally going back to his boyhood club, once again, Chelsea have had some major losses, and I do feel like they still need to pick up in terms of 1 or 2 signings. I do feel like they need another centre-back, to be honest with you. They need to finish up a Kimpembe or a Nathan Aka signing. Obviously, in terms of an attacker, they do need something else as well. But as I said, Raheem Sterling, he could be a magician for Chelsea. But as I said, just looking at Thomas Tuchel, although he won a Champions League with them, I've been very, very underwhelmed with this Chelsea team as a whole. Obviously, drew a lot of games. They drew more than double the amount of games that Spurs ended up drawing last season. I think Chelsea drew 11 games last season, which once again, for a team that wanted to compete for a title spot, very underwhelming. And after losing some big names, I do think Chelsea might struggle this season. Once again, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, of course, which team do I think will just miss out of the Champions League spot? Look, initially, I'm not going to lie, I had either Spurs or Arsenal here, but I just can't hold it as a Manchester United fan. I do think United will end up 5th place. Look, obviously it would be an improvement off of last season, and I know a lot of people might react weirdly to me putting United over Chelsea, but to be honest, I do feel like the Erik ten Hag era will be different for Manchester United. I don't know whether he will get Champions League football in his first season. I think it's very, very possible.
No.
Because, of course, look at them in preseason. They've been brilliant. Now, look, you can't base a season off of preseason. I mean, I'm pretty sure the season that Liverpool won their first ever and only ever Premier League was the season where they lost every single preseason game. So you can't judge it off of that. But, of course, looking at Man United, defensively and attacking-wise have looked a lot more secured under Erik ten Hag. Yes, we haven't been super busy this transfer window, but at the end of the day, I don't think United is a matter of getting in the necessary players that you want to. It's not a matter of buying more players. They've got the players. They just need a manager who knows how to work them.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Obviously, there are talks about them bringing in someone like Memphis Depay or a few other signings, which, by the way, I just feel like at this point in time, United bring in players that they should have 4 years ago. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo, 4 years late. Edinson Cavani, 4 years late. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at this point in time if we sign a 38-year-old Matthijs de Ligt one day. But of course, as I said, looking at Man United have looked very, very solid, dare I say, in pre-season. And I'm excited to see what they can do this Premier League. But whether they get Champions League football, I'm still very uncertain about that. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to our final four, the Champions League spots. And I know lots of people are going to question. I've got both Spurs and Arsenal here. I'm very aware of that, and I'm still trying to convince myself that they belong there. But of course, looking at that fourth place spot, I do think it will end up being Arsenal. As I said, a part of me was very convinced to put Arsenal here and Manchester United there, but let's be honest, me stating several times this video that I'm a United fan, that would not go down well. And as I said, looking at Arsenal, they've had some brilliant signings. Of course, just missed out by a fingertip from Champions League football last season. And on top of that, obviously they replaced Alexander Lacazette with Gabriel Jesus, who once again fire in pre-season. Obviously they got Zinchenko, top quality left back. They've got Vieira in the midfield, not quite Patrick Vieira, but he'll have to do. I do think Arsenal have built themselves a very, very solid team. And once again, just like every Arsenal fan says, if they can put together a good string of form, they can do something special. They won't fight for the Premier League at all this season, but I do think that they could get a Champions League spot. Now, of course, looking at our final three teams, I would like to say that it's going to be close between all three, but let's be honest, Tottenham Hotspurs probably there, although they've improved tenfold once again this transfer window, bringing in Richarlison, by the way, obviously getting in the likes of Langley, who once again could be a solid centre back. We'll see. Obviously Basuma in the midfield. They've got so many brilliant transfers, Perisic as well. Tottenham Hotspurs have probably won this transfer window, but at the end of the day, even though they've improved, I still feel like they are a far way away from Man City and Liverpool, just because of how strong they've been over the years. But of course, looking at Tottenham Hotspurs, as I said, I do believe adding the likes of Yves Bissouma to this midfield, next to someone like Højbjerg, could be a major, major improvement. Obviously, the likes of Kulusevski and Romero kind of signing permanent deals for Spurs, once again, major, major contribution. But once again, although they've brought in so many brilliant first-team players, whether they're going to like click and link straight away with this team, once again, we've seen massive names join the team before. Man United, I'm looking at you, where you've brought in Varane, Sancho, Ronaldo, all of these names, and they haven't all worked well together before. So once again, we're going to have to wait and see. Obviously, a big talking point is going to be the likes of Richarlison, whether he's going to connect with the likes of Heung-min Son and Kane, the best partnership the Premier League's ever seen. Is it going to work as a trio? We'll have to find out. But as I said, just looking at the way Spurs have improved under Antonio Conte, I can't not put them in a Champions League spot. They've really turned under Antonio Conte, proving that he is one of the best managers in the entire world. But ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to our final two teams. Now, once again, this is normally the most controversial part of the video, between Liverpool and Man City. Once again, same old story for the last 5 years in the Premier League, unfortunately. But of course, looking at both Liverpool and Man City, both of them have had tremendous transfer windows. Obviously, looking at Liverpool, a major loss as they did lose Sadio Mane, but signing the likes of Darwin Nunez could be a major boost for them. Obviously, looking at Manchester City, they did lose the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, and Zinchenko, all first-team players, but they did get the likes of Calvin Phillips, who could be a star in the midfield as a Fernandinho replacement, and of course Erling Haaland, one of the most promising strikers in the entire world. I've got no idea what to make of either of these two teams, whether they're best or better or worse after the transfer window. Obviously, as I said, Liverpool losing 4-0 to United in pre-season doesn't really mean anything, as it is pre-season and it doesn't mean much for most people. But of course, look at Liverpool, a major problem that I do have for them is on top of the likes of Sadio Mane, they've also lost the likes of Divock Origi and Minamino, who yes, didn't always start for Liverpool per se, but of course added squad depth to this team and allowed them to play better in the Champions League and other cup competitions. And whether they'd have the same depth that they once did, I'm not too sure about that, and that is where they might struggle versus Man City. Now, of course, Liverpool almost won the Premier League last season, but Man City once again proving their dominance. Now, of course, on top of that dominance, although they lost big names, I do still think that the addition of Erling Haaland will end up working out for them. I hate to say it, but I do think Man City will be Premier League winners once again. Once again, I absolutely hate to say it, and I do think Liverpool will end up second place. As I said, a lot of people are talking about the fact that whether Erling Haaland is Premier League ready and whether he'll score goals in the Premier League. I mean, let's be honest, it's Erling Haaland. I think goals are almost guaranteed for him. I know you can't say guaranteed when it comes to football, but let's be honest, Erling Haaland will score goals. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my Premier League predictions for the 22-23 season. As I said, this is kind of the placement that I think all 20 teams will end in. As I said, was not an easy prediction video to make. especially for United to end so close in terms of entering the Champions League. But I, of course, want you guys to put down in the comment section down below, where do you guys think I went wrong and where would you place teams? And of course, don't forget to send me on my Instagram, it's actually Finn, your Premier League predictions for match day 1, of course, the team you support, how you think your team will do, along with who the best player will be. Guys, I hope you did end up enjoying the video. Don't forget to like down below. Let's see if we can get this video to 40 to 50 likes. I'd really appreciate it, along with subscribing if you're not subscribed. The road to 10,000 by the end of the year is very, very possible, and you guys are pretty awesome. I feel like we will end up hitting it. But guys, this has been Finn, FYNN. Cheers.